we'll kick this off. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Kelly, founder and CEO of Upwave, a brand analytics company. Thank you so much for joining us on the Masters of Brand Measurement panel today. This is a quarterly panel that Upwave has hosted since 2018 to bring together thought leaders in the measurement of brand advertising. We always hope that by attending, you hear some new perspectives and new ideas, and I'm sure with our impressive panelists today, that will be the case. I'm honored that today's panel will be hosted by Tamika Key, a Deputy Managing Director from CIM, the well-known Center for Innovative Media Measurement, who has an impressive career in our industry as an executive, founder, and correspondent. I'm also honored that we'll be joined by 4 insightful executives from leading TV measurement companies who have a front row seat to the changing TV measurement landscape. Now, unless you've been living under a rock in the advertising world, you've heard endless conversations about the shift in TV currencies, how ad buyers and sellers agree on how many people saw an ad. This is indeed a critical step forward in our industry, but also not the only measurement piece on which we should be innovating. So I look forward to hearing the panelists today talk about different topics like audience insights, various outcomes, full funnel measurement, and things like that. So today's panel will look beyond currency, how the measurement ecosystem will evolve to meet other needs of advertisers in the years ahead. Thanks for joining, and I'll now turn it over to Tamika to introduce our panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And just kind of to echo what you said, so many of the conversations have importantly been focused on how, whether, and why to adopt new currencies, as well as how and whether to try to standardize them and all the challenges that they're in. But I think it's great that Upwave wants to go beyond that and think about the future and what happens beyond currency. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists. We have Ashwin Navin, CEO of Samba TV, Tal Chalazin, CTO of Innovid, Joshua Lee, the CTO of EDO, and Josh Hudgens, the VP of Product at VideoAmp. And what I love is that we've got a mix of exec plus tech plus product, so we have a variety of different perspectives. Now let's just dive right in. The premise of this conversation is that Upwave believes in some ways we're in a currency bubble and that currency is getting all of the attention, maybe even too much being paid to demographics, and not enough attention is being paid to advanced audiences and outcomes. What are your thoughts, gentlemen?
I think it's a fair statement. And, I think the loss of accreditation among, some of the biggest currency providers in the world has sort of created a feeling of an opportunity that many want to capitalize on, that TAM now becomes available to more companies. But I think you're posing the right question, Tamika, which is, what can we do that hasn't been done before, rather than thinking about the world persisting as it looked in the 20th century? So it's a fair question. And certainly, I think a lot of the innovation that's coming into the space should be devoted to what can be, not what was.
I'll jump in super quick to Ashwin here. Definitely agree to the question you posed and the Upwave position about currency bubble. Clearly, currency is important, meaning, and maybe not use the word currency. What it actually means is, what is the unit that a buyer and a seller agree to transact on it, which is 100% important. But I think that the next level is, how do you measure that? How do you get trust in the system that the measurer of such currency is agreed upon on both sides? And then on top of that is adding other elements that feed into that currency, or alternative ways, alternative units, like outcome, like advanced audience, like advanced other things. And I think building a system that allows an interchanged currency and a smarter ways to measure is, I think, the importance where we need to focus on.
Oh, go ahead, Josh, please.
Oh, I was just going to jump in there too. And I agree with the underlying premise of the question, which is that with all of the change that's happening, currency should start to encompass more than just demographic measurement. I 100% agree with that. I would challenge a little bit the notion that that's not happening. Our experience at VideoAmp is we're seeing a lot of innovation and demand from both buyers and sellers to not only do things like advanced audience measurement and outcome measurement, but apply those to actual currency guarantees. So we're seeing a lot of that movement in the market as we speak.
What it sounds like here, though, is even there's a little bit of a separation between like it's like currency and measurement are sometimes conflated. And yes, you need to transact, but are there other things outside of demo? What are some of these other things that, given the fact that each of your companies kind of fits in a different space, what are some of the things that you are finding you're being asked to measure that you think maybe the industry isn't paying enough attention to?
Definitely advanced services. You mentioned it, Tamika, that, you think about the world today, to be able to use, age and gender demography feels very 1950s. When you're thinking about what are the advanced marketers looking to do, it's maximize reach among very specific types of audiences. And that addresses the diversity that we have in the population, the diversity in who we are, what we care about, the things that we're interested to buy, and that we're in market for, but also the fact that we live and consume so differently today than we've ever had the opportunity to consume in the past. To be able to address people across platforms, and to have a singular view of the consumer as they move fluidly between platforms is a mainstay of, our product line, what we do from an identity perspective and what our customers want to be able to do to innovate and move the industry forward.
So I want to add our audience and just make sure that I am not the only one who has to ask questions. We do have a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in and I will get them into our panelists. I think I interrupted someone though.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tamika, that, I can say from my perspective at EDO, so EDO, we feel, very unique that we're focused on behavioral outcomes. In particular, we focus on behaviors like search, site visit, all the behaviors that are kind of predictive outcomes for your business. And so, those are the types of outcomes that we've been asked by, kind of our clients to really focus on. Because it has that property that it goes beyond just if somebody saw an ad, but it doesn't go quite as far as, waiting for that final transaction, which both has flaws of, A, being a lagged indicator, and then two, there's a lot that happens between somebody seeing an ad and somebody making a purchase decision. So I think there are a lot of kind of analytical questions of, is end transaction really the best analytical tool to understand marketing performance? And if it's not the right tool to understanding marketing performance, is it the right tool to be used for the basis of a currency?
I feel like you gentlemen have sort of brought up three different ways to measure things already, though, somewhat consistently: behaviors, outcomes, and audiences. And obviously, advertisers need to use each of these for different reasons. Ashwin, want to drill down into kind of what you said about sort of advanced audiences. Are you finding that advertisers are standardizing what they mean when they say advanced audience, or is that still kind of all over the place?
I think, like I said, advanced marketers have a pretty clear view of who they're trying to reach. And sometimes that view is shaped by their own data and their own insights. And sometimes that's going to be formed through collaboration with even some of their competitors. And what I think they're hoping to do is to achieve, some alignment with their suppliers and allow their suppliers to bring to them an efficient way to reach the audience that they're trying to reach. And so that's where the prevalence of clean rooms and privacy compliant identity matches come into play. And it's a really exciting landscape. Again, what's to come will look very different than what's happened in the past. And it brings clients very efficient reach to exactly who they're trying to reach, while allowing publishers to optimize for yield. And that's just a fascinating future state for our industry that's unfolding in real time.
Joshua, it seemed like you were nodding and kind of agreeing.
Yeah, I think there is that, building off what Ashwin said, just that interesting dynamic of, who are they targeting now? Who do advertisers want to be targeting, right? But then how do you actually activate against that, right? Who can you actually reach? How are in the current state of technical systems, how can you actually reach those people? But then there's a third aspect of that, which is, who can I be targeting? Who is actually most effective for me to be reaching? I think that's just to me, the really interesting dynamic that really comes into the way, technology is evolving, is that those things are becoming more, fusing those three pieces together are becoming closer and closer.
And Tal,
I wanted to jump in. I wanted to jump in super quick. It was one thing, just kind of a misconception that I think we didn't touch on yet, and And I think it's an important, when we talk to outsider on looking into the industry, it comes up a lot. So we talk a lot about advanced audience and outcome and behavioral. A lot of them are person-based activities, but television is a household-based device in many places. And I think this distinction between so many people that think about digital marketing, think about the mobile, think about Facebook or other type of person-based digital media platforms, and that leap from a household to a person is not the easiest to be done. In most cases, it's literally impossible. So I think that as we talk about both currency and obviously the measurement of that currency, it's really important to make that distinction that much of television viewership is a household device, and not always you can identify the exact person. So a lot of your thinking, both as a marketer and as a supplier that make commitment, needs to be on an existence of that person and not knowledge of that and absolute knowledge of that person.
Josh, were you going to chime in?
Well, back to your original question about like advanced audiences, we believe are critical to what we're doing from a measurement perspective. We were doing it long before it became an issue in currency measurement. And what's been really interesting is to watch the enthusiasm with which people are adopting advanced audience-based techniques in currency transactions themselves. So seeing them make the leap from traditional measurement and start to become a factor in currency measurement. And generally, we found that we're seeing people bring the audiences they want to bring to deals from all different directions. We have advertisers that are very adept at constructing these and bring these to deals. Publishers are increasingly constructing their own segments that they want to bring to market. And what we consider ourselves to be is the facilitator of those things, to make sure that they can be accurately measured in a very privacy safe way, where we can move audiences around and do the things we need to do with them through clean rooms and other privacy enhancing technologies to enable and facilitate those transactions.
So we got two questions from the audience that touch on a couple of the things, but before I get to them, I wanted to kind of tease out a little bit, because it seems like that push and pull between household level sort of data and targeting and person level data and targeting is a challenge, but also a challenge because that's not how TV has been bought and sold, but it is how digital has been bought and sold for a very long time. So you have these two worlds kind of colliding. Anyone have any thoughts on, does anybody want to take a bet on whether households or person level is going to win, or are we just going to have to deal with both?
Well, the biggest challenge today is that all of the scaled data assets are household data assets. And it becomes a statistical challenge to take this massive data set that is inherently denominated in households and then apply very small scale, like panel-based personification models on top of it. So I think the real challenge is going to be, how do you personify at scale that's roughly congruent with the scale with which we already have these tremendously scaled household data assets.
Yeah, and so I think that's the hazard for our industry right now, is that, you know, we've been sort of saying that data beats modeling and data science. Big data is going to prevail, yet we seem to be looking backwards and trying to recreate, you know, the projection models of the past with even smaller panels than we've had in the past. And so I think there's a hazard here that we, you know, in a rush, or I guess as you put the question earlier, the gold rush or bubble around this, that we're too hasty in thinking about how can we build something that will withstand, you know, the tests of our clients and our partners, so they believe the currency is more robust than it ever has been.
So drilling down into that building piece, right? We got a question from, it seems like Shailene Dar, which, you know, how should measurement and currency providers deal with the lack of congruence between the data taxonomies and the structures from the various supply chain entities in digital ads? So each of you has your own platform. Each of you sort of measures audiences in a specific way. You have your secret sauce, but then there's some standards, right? The advertisers that you work with want specific things. They bring their own data to the equation. If you enable programmatic sort of advertising, the DSP has a taxonomy that they use. Is there room for people to work together to kind of standardize some of these aspects? Like how are you tackling these what seem like simple challenges, but at scale are very difficult?
Yeah, I would say it's not. I'm sorry for just jumping in. I feel like that's the rules of the game here. Also, I'm Israeli, and politeness is not one of our traits. So I just on that point, it's definitely not a small thing to resolve. On data taxonomy and alignment, I'll give the Innovate point of view. It clearly each one of us have a little bit of a different point of view in that. First of all, Innovate is not a data platform. We're not buying or selling data. We're more of an enabler. So first of all, we allow marketers to say, if you would like to see, I don't know, reach or frequency broken up by some type of audience data, advanced audience or not, then we will take whatever taxonomy that you'd like, and we will match it with whatever party out there. But I definitely think that in order for things to really scale up, we do need at least the basic taxonomy to be aligned across the board. OpenAP started in 2017 or so, exactly on that idea of creating unified taxonomy on advanced audience for television broadcaster, for data-driven linear or other type of media. This is super critical. In order to buy at scale, an auto-intender needs to be an auto-intender everywhere, or other type of elements like that. So so on one hand, yes, it's clear that it's important to create unification. It's easier said than done to do it at scale.
As we are seeing with the JIC, which is a perfect segue, right? Because that's sort of what this joint industry committee, that is what they're trying to do on some levels. So do you gentlemen have thoughts on the JIC? What did the JIC get right so far, and where has it fallen short?
This was a great, I was actually just going to mention the JIC in response to the question. I think it's a valiant effort. And I think we can all applaud, the energy that goes into setting something like this up. When I think it's maybe a little bit of a stretch to call it a JIC in the global sense, that we've seen in other markets. But it is an awesome thing that in the US, the industry is coming together, with a handful of leaders right now, but hopefully more over time, to agree on what, the definitions are. How do we count views? How do we count audience? Taking some of the basic, sort of definitions out of one commercial entity and into a more of an industry standards body is a great thing. And so certainly OpenAP, from an audience definition standpoint, I think there's definitely some standardization that needs to happen in a JIC, which we expect to happen in the US, which is great. Where did it fall short? Well, we need to broaden the tent. This feels a bit TV heavy right now. And we need to get more streaming providers. We need to get the future of video, into the tent and make sure that we're thinking about not the way things were, but the way things could be.
Joshua, were you going to say something, or Josh?
Yeah, I can jump in. So echo, Ashwin's, positive statements around the importance of the initiative. And then as we were saying on the data taxonomy question, anything that makes more data available in a standardized way is a really key foundational element for the industry. I think in terms of thinking about where it falls short, I think it goes back to the first question you asked, Tamika, around being in a currency bubble around audience. The JIC is very focused on audience measurement right now. And I think one of the key tensions in there is really, what is the core requirement of an audience measurement currency? Is it truly just about counting people in terms of counting eyeballs? Or is there also a notion of quality that needs to be built in? And if there is a notion of quality that needs to be built in, it goes back to that first question, what are the measures? Like, how do you actually measure quality? And you laid out, well, I think, Tamika, like the three choices that advertisers have. And so I think that is probably one of the most complex pieces of the puzzle that the JIC will need to work through.
I mean, I could also add another, so we said three, right? We said behaviors, outcomes, and audiences, but you just added quality. And there are people who also want to measure attention now. And I'm sure there are people who want to measure, coming back to sort of the outcomes, the variety of outcomes that can be measured, whether it's a click, whether it's a call, whether it's, did you go into the store? Did I buy something in the middle of watching a live streamed ad? I guess my question would be, or one of the questions would be, are there outcomes that you are seeing in your respective platforms that are coming to the fore, or that advertisers are coalescing around as opposed to some other ones?
I think for VideoAmp, the big theme we see in outcome measurement is it's persistent diversity, right? We haven't seen anything converge onto a single standard yet. There's still lots of different heterogeneous needs across our advertisers to measure the performance of their campaigns in different dimensions, whether that's conversions or sales lift, whether it's store visits, whether it's tune in, like whether it's more niche verticals. We're seeing still continued persistent heterogeneity there.
But what does that mean for you in terms of building a platform that sort of fulfills their needs? Like how do your teams kind of, if there is this consistent divergence, which makes sense, advertisers have different needs, how do you figure out how to kind of do what they need you to do at scale?
I mean,
Well, that
certainly
way-
from
Yeah, go ahead, Ashwin.
I was gonna say, this is the test of good platforms is, how do you build the right balance? At Samba, we take a very balanced approach to, where you need real-time optimization, platforms are a great, way to bring that to market, and where you need, highly custom, more methodologically innovative things, then you've got to take that, maybe into more of an offline, more rigorous study. And we want to meet clients where they are and whatever level of rigor that they want to bring, to the transaction. And so, I think it does require some, sort of diversity in the way that we can engage. But, where we believe strongly in, when you think about whether it's currency or, the way that media will be optimized, certainly in platform, top of funnel, reach, incrementality, these are the things that get standardized and become available in real time, so that they can be, addressed, optimized in flight, not months or weeks or days after the flight.
Yeah,
I'd say, go ahead, Josh.
I would echo that, and that's sort of the art of platform building and building products is you figure out which things you want to invest the most in and standardize around and build productized versions of, and what things are sort of the long tail of a more managed service approach. And that's sort of the art of building the platform itself. So +1 to Ashwin's comment.
Tal, were you gonna hop in?
Yeah, you asked about what are outcome metrics that people are asking and where are we focused. So I can say from an Innovate point of view, we about a year ago we made an acquisition of TV Squared and launched Innovate XP. And TV Squared made a great, an amazing product and great success on really honing in to digital marketers that can correlate spend into very specific digital KPIs, app download, website visit, search lift. So very, very specific actions. So in building a platform, what TV Squared did, and now we're doing at Innovate, is we're really trying to cluster types of marketers based on the action that really matters to them. And yes, there's many things that you can measure, but if you zoom out, there are a few attributes that matters for a couple categories of marketers. There are the marketers that are selling household level products that are not transact online, let's say like a car or a vacation or I don't know, other things that are bought in physical retail. And you need a solution for them. There are marketers that, however they sell, they at the end of the day, a good proxy for their business would be an app download. So then we have a solution for that, and so forth. So we are trying to look for building a platform that categorize a few important attributes that we can correlate exposure against.
What is nice about this? Oh, go ahead, Joshua.
Oh yeah, I did want to add that I want to build on what Tal said, because I think we think at EDO, we like to start with kind of like, what are the requirements of the types of outcomes or behaviors that we should be measuring? And so the way we think about it is, first, we want measures that are real time. We want measures that are predictive of business outcomes. We want measures that are kind of always on, something where we can get history to fuel accurate models. And we like something that can be standardized across categories. So I think our experience with this type of data is you can build the best models to understand kind of really what's working and what's not working. through having cross-category data. And then so for us, what that translates to has been a focus on, and Tal mentioned some of these, but a focus on search, site visitation, and then more recently adding things like app download, physical footfall traffic, if it's like physical, which is really just the physical indicator of the same digital concept.
What I love is that obviously each of your companies plays a different sort of position in this mix, and you kind of specialize in what sort of your clients or the brands are looking for. But no one was like, our platform does it all. No one was like, our platform's better than everyone else's. And I like that, because I think we're coming from a place where there was one platform that had to do it all, or that everyone sort of, kind of assigned, or let's say there was only one option, and now there are many options, which I think, is a great thing. Which is an interesting segue to another question. So for example, Amazon paid for Nielsen measurement for Thursday Night Football. But every week they would publish their own numbers to say, well, this is what Nielsen said people watched, or this is how many people Nielsen said watched. This is how many people are internal data, or this is, said watched Thursday Night Football. What was your reaction to that? What does this mean for companies like yours? What does this mean for third-party measurement in general?
Our reaction was, yeah, of course. It perfectly illustrated a lot of the shortcomings that you see with the legacy approach. And I think illustrated the need for a far more data-centric approach that involves more collaboration and takes into better account all of the different distribution mechanisms that something like Thursday Night Football on Amazon is going to involve. So I think it points to the reason why we're having this conversation at all. I think is a good way of putting it.
Go ahead, Tal. Go ahead.
To add to Josh's point, even putting Amazon aside and zooming out, I'm sure that all of the marketers that spend money on Thursday night football are also spending money in other places. So maybe as important as Amazon and Thursday football is to someone's budget, at the end of the day, you want to see a holistic picture and you want to measure everywhere. So Amazon has clearly better than anyone else. They know exactly how many Prime subscribers they have and how many people signed up and logged in and have an amazing view. But they don't know that 10 minutes later someone switched to YouTube or tune into Disney Plus or to other type of platform. And that's really what marketers are after.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point, which is that, football is a wonderful example of how the audience for NFL is diverse and varied across platforms. And so we should expect some dissonance between first party data and what, industry measurement companies, like in the industry of measurement, what companies like us will produce, which is taking a much more holistic view and normative view, from day to day, not just Thursday, but every day people are watching football across streaming, broadcast, cable, through, their mobile devices, as well as their, connected televisions and other devices, that will have an industry that's focused on trying to create the most accurate and representative view of the whole audience.
What I can add, ask one last thing on Amazon. Yeah, I think there was a lot of, Amazon Thursday Night Football was one of the big prominent examples of a big live event moving fully to streaming. I think there was a lot of anxiety around, what is that going to mean for performance? Is the engagement that we see from these types of big live events, is it going to be fundamentally different on streaming versus live linear? And what we saw, because we spent a lot of time analyzing Amazon Thursday Night Football this past year, is that we actually saw the engagement rates on Thursday Night Football were just as good, if not better, than what we've seen on football across in linear TV since 2015. So we did see really good consistency in the data in terms of the quality of the inventory.
I mean, one of the questions is, well, how was the engagement on linear measured previously, right? Like I think that's an interesting question. But to a point that I think Ashwin made earlier, a lot of even this conversation now has kind of been focused on what we can define as linear and broadcast. We haven't even really talked as much about streaming and CTV and the measurement and that side of things. So, you know, I want to ask you guys two questions. One, the upfronts are coming up. And those are, you know, it's in the past, it was primarily focused on sort of linear, but the upfronts are increasingly diverse now, and sort of you get the full mix. You get the full mix of inventory within. How, you know, what do you expect to see in this upcoming upfront as it pertains specifically to your business? Don't all answer at the same time.
I think we'll all have, I think, various takes on this, but you know, I'm excited that over the last couple of upfront cycles, many media companies are basically introducing more ways that their media can be counted, and giving their clients more confidence that, you know, they're getting value, they're getting efficiency, performance. And I think this year is one where we see that menu of measurement actually, you know, reaching record levels, you know, where clients across every industry group, you know, whether you're optimizing for reach and desire, demand for your product, to, you know, just actually driving sales and ROAS. And in an economic environment like we live in or operate in today, it's table stakes for media companies to provide their advertisers that level of confidence, so that marketers can lean into their enterprises, into their CFOs and say, you know, this is money well spent. And I think we can expect that, you know, from the biggest media companies, even to the most emerging and more nascent, you know, with the new fronts, that you'll see just an awesome amount of innovation and announcements around measurement that attaches to the media that we buy at the upfronts.
I think we're all if we zoom out, the cross media measurement world, or cross media television, call it. What we're all are after is the general secular shift from linear television into the streaming world. And obviously consumers already, or viewers, understand that this is a tremendous product just by the sheer transition between the one platform to another. When we talk at Innovate, when we talk to a lot of marketers, you can see the dollars are not moving as fast as time spent is. And one of the reasons is that trust and transparency is not there yet. It's not easy to understand duplication of audience. It's not easy to understand, to ensure really that frequency is capped at the right way. So there's a bunch of things that makes the industry hard. So back to your question about what are we looking for the upfront, I think just getting, maybe taking a page out of Ashwin's answer also about the economic state that we're in right now. Getting marketers feel more comfortable because of the solution that all four of us are offering to the table of better measurement. That essentially what it does is give you more transparency to understand what actually happened, and where do you want to spend your money. So people actually voting with their dollars saying, I actually believe in that industry and I want to spend more money in the streaming world, specifically in a world where the economics are a little more tight. That's I think the biggest proof point that we're all looking for.
From a video ad perspective, I would characterize what we're seeing in the upfronts mostly along the lines of massive change in the currency space. And we're seeing lots of demand from both buyers and sellers, not only for what you would traditionally associate with the upfronts, like broad-based, demo-based deals, but also lots of interest and demand for more advanced, fine-grained measurement techniques, DDL, advanced audience-based things. And a surprising amount of willingness to try new things from both sides of the transaction.
And what do you think has kind of sparked this? Obviously, there's been a massive shift, right? Like, I think we can all kind of, or I can just say, I didn't, working in this industry, I didn't think I would ever see an era where there was a Nielsen alternative. It just kind of was just like, oh, this is the way that this business operates. And now we are in sort of what feels like a very brave new world. Is the notion of buying inventory in advance, is that something that's antiquated? Is the idea of, hey, we're going to package all of this up for you and we want you to make this commitment to us now. Is that something that we will continue to see moving forward? And I am cognizant of the fact that we are about to head into the upfronts and you guys don't want to create any problems for your businesses moving forward. But, just thinking about that, do we foresee a world where the upfronts are not a thing? Or do the upfronts look very different than they did? And if so, is that 5 years from now? Is that 10 years from now?
I do think there's.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of the kind of structural ways in which the upfronts were created, or there's definitely linkage to the way linear TV has historically been operated. That I think, so obviously that's changing, and so I think that's one of the things putting pressure on the overall structure to change. I think one of the key areas that we are eager to look at this upfront is exactly what you're saying in terms of, how much advertisers are going to hold back dollars for flexible spending, and rather than committing it in the upfront to use it on scatter. And I think what that will bring a lot more need for real-time measurement, real-time optimization, to really get the latest understanding of how can I make the best decision today on where to spend my media dollars, since there'll just be, more dollars withheld for that type of flexible spending.
Josh, you were nodding.
It's an interesting question. I think the perspective from this group is probably going to be like, there's far more advanced ways to do things than the way things have historically been done in the upfronts. I would balance that against the massive investment that's been made in operating businesses this way, and expect change to occur, but incrementally, and probably not all at once. I think there's going to be a place for a considerable amount of time for the way that business has been conducted historically, and I think we'll see change happen incrementally. But I certainly see the willingness to try new things by all parties involved. So I think the real question is just going to be, what's going to be the pace of change? Ashwin,
what were you going to say?
Yeah, I'd say, the operative word is flexibility. The deal making that happens at an upfront is really attached to scarcity of certain types of media that advertisers want to be a part of. And in certain environments, that scarcity will persist, and so we should expect upfronts to persist. And where sort of it becomes future-proofed is when we can attach it to flexibility. Media companies that have really valuable franchises and have a very valuable and scarce audience that advertisers want to be a part of, they will have to commit, and that's what allows them to make those big multi-billion-dollar bets and productions possible. But as the audiences become more fluid, the way that those dollars and those commitments are fulfilled will ultimately be, very flexible across various platforms, and not just attached to the Super Bowl or just attached to that one tentpole event that you might see the audience fulfilled in various ways. And what makes that appealing, for not just the publisher, but also to the advertisers, that it's going to be supported with deduplicated, verified audience reach. And so the advertiser feels that they're not being shortchanged by a shrinking linear audience, but that they're fulfilled by a deduplicated and incremental audience on other platforms that performs for them.
You brought up something though a little bit earlier, and you brought up the idea of the new fronts, because the upfronts, right, are they seem to be dominated by sort of the traditional big media companies, but we have an entire kind of CTV ecosystem of app providers and content providers that also want to, make their inventory and their audiences available, perhaps in I guess on the programmatic side, it'd be like a PG deal or a PMP. Are we setting up kind of two different environments? Like, do you think that the new fronts and the upfronts will remain separate, or will we kind of will we find parity across maybe the new providers and some of the bigger companies, given that the audiences may be there?
The fascinating thing is there are now, through mergers and other things, there are basically the same enterprise appearing in both places. And that's really underscoring this point about flexibility. I think that the currency to make this all possible is really incrementality and deduplication. Like, this is what the publishers are talking about, what they're making currency for advertisers to feel comfortable showing up in multiple platforms on multiple properties, to reach an audience that's still the same, that they've always wanted to reach, It's just that it's going to be fulfilled across different platforms with the confidence that a third party can verify, that this is in fact incremental to what you got through linear.
We've been
I
using.
definitely think that this delta. Just one point about your question. I think it's an important, almost a barometer for the whole industry. But this delta between the new front and the upfront, in the early days, it was important because it opened the stage for non-pay TV carried networks to participate in the marketplace. But now it's kind of useless when, for example, when YouTube moves to the new front, to the upfront instead of the new front. It doesn't matter, aside from timing on the calendar. I don't think that it matters that much, the delta between them, which in my mind, I think that this is an amazing, again, barometer for the industry, or seeing where things are going. Because the real success would be when we stop calling things connected television and television, but just call everything television. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Yes, there will always be multiple packets. Everything would move towards being more data-driven. Everything will move to be more audience-based and more automated, and definitely more measured. But we will, at least in the foreseeable future, we will still have some legacy and more of the future. But at the end of the day, it's all television.
So I did want to shift gears. And we got two questions from the audience, but we've been talking a lot about advertisers and what they need. We've talked a lot about media companies and what they need. We haven't talked about the consumer and sort of their experience with ads and their experience with being measured and privacy. And so one of our attendees sort of asked a question around, there's a big debate surrounding privacy today. Yes. How do each of your respective companies tackle that issue? I would ask more, how closely are you working with general counsel and your legal team in terms of some of the regulations that may sort of reduce access to the data that makes your platforms function? How are you thinking about that? And sort of what are you thinking about in terms of audience measurement in a world where the data that we've gotten so used to using is not as easily accessible?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the top, most important kind of questions, I think, for all of us on this panel is, how to they properly respect consumer privacy. I think at EDO, we think about it from a couple of angles, and I think we like to approach these types of problems with technical solutions. So I think the first area that we've been investing in is first what we call micro cohort modeling. So rather than doing our analysis at an individual one-to-one level, to actually do an analysis using groups of people, right? So think of groups of people as a small group of, you can split it by geography, you can split it by a lot of different keys, but using that as the key way to do our analysis. We all know, aggregation is a way to protect anonymity. I think the other area, which I just find, kind of personally very interesting, is that there is a lot of innovation happening in the data clean room space. And I think there's a lot of innovation going there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to use different techniques, I know there's been a lot of research done into things like differential privacy. There are a lot of cryptographic tools that can be used to allow secure computation get the same outputs while still maintaining privacy. So I think those are the two key areas that we look at.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Go ahead, Tom. Yeah, at VideoAmp, we're investing heavily in many of those same areas. We want to think about an approach that's natively privacy enhancing. So rather than solving the problem with, like to your question about getting general counsel involved, certainly you want the legal folks involved, but I ultimately believe deeply this is a problem technology can solve, right? So that's why we're investing so heavily in things like clean rooms. We're investigating some of the new cryptographic techniques that are coming out, like MPC style approaches. We're doing a lot with differential privacy. We're doing a lot on aggregate-based modeling. So all things that can give you the insight and granularity you want while still doing things in a way that enhances and preserves the user's privacy.
just to add what I wanted to say earlier, I agree with both Josh and Joshua's point. I think at a high level, what got me very excited about the world of privacy is that I think in designing the television of the future, we're really taking private, and by when I'm saying we, I mean everyone on this call and a lot of other companies in the industry is kind of the royal we, we all take privacy as a first principle, not thinking about it as an after effect. Not designing something as a quick to market as possible and maybe with the most amount of value for us personally, and then thinking about everything else. I think lesson learned from other forms of digital marketing is that privacy should be designed at the first step, and this is just refreshing to see how we're all building television product, that it just seems like it's much more sustainable for the future.
Let me ask you a question then, Tal. I love the sentiment of privacy first. And I think that is the guiding principle we should be thinking about in this landscape. When you zoom out from what we're talking about, Tamika, from a measurement standpoint, you think about where's the world flowing, if you sort of look at what's happened in Europe over the last half a decade and what's happening in the US and California and other states, what does privacy first mean for an industry that's built on third-party data? How are you guys thinking about that?
I think the main, I said it's meant for me, so I'll take it. So the main thing as a guiding principle, this is not my quote, it's an IAB statement, but we definitely live by it, is moving from tracking by default to privacy by default. Meaning that we're not just putting as many pixels as we can, with as many, just to be tactical, and with as many macros as possible, collecting many device IDs and other parameters, content IDs and bundle IDs and other, and just hoarding everything and trying to collect everything, and even if we don't need that. So moving into a world where we do collect what we actually need in order to fulfill our job and apply as much generalization as we can, like what Joshua was saying earlier about cohorts, about one-way hashing IP address, never sharing it outside. A lot of our access to ACR data is not shared outside. We do make a lot of we do take opt-in as a very important element in everything we do. So all of those are very, very critical. I agree with you that when a lot of the data is third-party data, it makes things harder. But if you asked all the questions ahead of time and really take this privacy by default approach, you at least limit the problems going forward.
Yeah, so I'll give you our take on this, and I appreciate that point. That certainly the IAB party line, representing a broad group, of ad tech companies, but as it relates to just Samba and our clients, what we like to be able to say, to our clients is that that they are dealing with a first party, and the regulatory winds are blowing against data brokers, against undisclosed transfers of data, and our industry is unfortunately in our mad dash for innovation with all this sort of alt currencies, is when you lift under the hood, it's like, do the consumers even know that you even exist, that you're sitting on mountains of their data and trying to build currencies on their data that they don't participate in, that they don't have a voice in? So without naming names, I've heard measurement companies represent their footprint of smart TVs. Like, they don't make TVs. They don't actually make the technology that goes in TVs. They don't have any consent with the consumer for the data that they claim to have rights to. And so I think this industry is up for some rough waters ahead. We pride ourselves on actually building the technology that goes into the TV that consumers have to activate themselves by name. They have to opt into Samba, and that's what entitles us, to the data, and it's permission from the consumer to opt in. It's always opt in. It's always permission so that consumers can opt out or delete. It's allowed us to do business in Europe. It's allowing us to do business in the US, and I can't wait for a privacy law in the US. I think it's something we should expect. And it certainly allows our customers and partners to believe and have some trust that, that their measurement provider, Samba, is not going anywhere, because we're built on first-party data.
So we we're almost sort of getting towards the end. I want to tell the audience, if you guys have any, if you people have any any additional questions, please dump them into the chat. I did want to ask you gentlemen 2 questions. One came from Marshall Cohen, and his question is, so the MRC is the only auditor in our industry that examines if companies are actually doing what they say they're doing. At least that's the perception. Will any of you on this webinar pledge to submit what you're doing for examination by the MRC? And if not, why? And I think I would just add, the question is, does the MRC govern your part of the business? And if so, then maybe that answers the question. But then does anybody want to hop in on that?
Yeah, I have a very easy yes here. So in Upwave, we add, serve, and measure roughly 40% of US CTV volume right now, and we are the billable metric for that. All of that is MRC accredited. All of our impression tracking. This is kind of, let's call it the more basic and nascent level of currency, but in reality, this is what it is right now in connected television. For the bulk of the inventory. We actually worked with the MRC to define what does it mean to measure CTV, and we were the first to be accredited on that. And 100%, we are in a believer that we believe. I'm sorry, that we need an outside body to measure and audit what you're doing. How can if trust is very critical in order for a more fruitful future of the industry. An outside measurer of a very complicated technology is very critical.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of those same sentiments. We're big believers in auditing and oversight and standards bodies. We're currently having conversations with the MRC about what an audit process would look like, and working out the roadmap and the long-term plan for how that would unfold.
I think it's fair to say that MRC plays a very valuable role, and it's about building trust in, the currency of transactions, regardless of whether it's TV or CTV digital. MRC plays a very important role across the whole gamut. And what we've seen, even when companies lose accreditation, doesn't mean the currency goes away. It just means that they exist to operate and provide more belief and more trust in a particular methodology or metric or process. And so it's somewhat orthogonal to the question of can currencies exist? I think it's just a sort of an additional seal of approval and confidence building.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting, what it also highlights is there are so many different bodies, and there are so many different, and I mean, we came from talking about the JIC, which is sort of the media owners at least going, hey, we need to standardize something that the MRC was not able to, or sort of in the space to be able to do. I think it's like, which body are you certified by, and does that matter to your buyers, and does that matter to your, to your audience? Joshua, were you going to say something or no?
I was going to say, I think we all feel like, I think we're all saying the importance of having standards. I think we probably all feel like it's also just very personally helpful as we're building these platforms to have, all that requirements gathering have been done by this body, and we can really go through it and really make sure that obviously we're doing that requirements gathering on our own, but it's just very validating to have that third party seal of approval. And also it's a good sanity check to, make sure that we're keying into all the right areas.
I guess I'm almost going to turn this over to Chris, but what I would say is, are there any other topics or hot button issues or things that, or last takeaways that you would like to leave for our audience? Any of you?
You posed the question at the beginning, Tamika, about a bubble. And, whenever, people talk about bubbles, you sort of think of like, the macro economy and, what's going on maybe in the banking industry and everything else. But in fact, what bubble is often referred to is when there's overhyped expectations relative to the fundamental growth or value of the business. And I don't think that that's true categorically. It may be true in pockets of our industry, like maybe in the audience measurement space. But as an industry that cares about measurement and data and getting things right, it's a very exciting. This is like the most attention and focus that our industry has ever had. The floodgates are opening on innovation, on competition, standardization. I would just say, watch the space. There's going to be an amazing amount of innovation unfolding over the next couple of years.
Joshua, you were nodding. Or Tao?
Sure. I support, subscribe to all of that point. It's very, very exciting. But at the same time, just to add, I think we're in the very early innings. A lot of marketers we talk to from outside in, it looks like everything is already solved. We're all talking about it for a long time. It's not there yet, but I think that there's a lot to work with. And we are very excited about working with our client as partners, a design partner, to really build a platform that is suitable for their needs.
I think I have a very kind of just like tech and data nerd attitude towards some of these things, but I guess I'm just personally excited by seeing the changes in the technology and data. I think one of the things that just motivates me personally is thinking about, you know, the world where we can get to a fully automated ecosystem, right? You can run some ads, you can pick whatever kind of outcome metric is you're most interested in, whether that be, you know, we listed them all, and then having systems that kind of automatically optimize those and automatically figure out, you know, what works best for you as a marketer. And then, yeah, it's just really exciting, you know, echoing what Ashwin and Tal have said, like the steps that we're all taking as an industry to move towards that state of the world is very exciting to see.
Yeah, and re-anchoring on the original prompt about the currency in the bubble, I think it is a testament to the massive amount of change that's happening right now. And when you're kind of at the ground level, like most of us all are, that can feel chaotic and it can feel messy. And sometimes I think it's easy to lose sight of the fact that it's tremendously exciting. And I think it's ultimately going to lead to a world that's better for buyers, it's better for sellers, and it's going to be better, I think, in the end too, for the consumers. They'll get better advertising, their data will be better protected, and if things will in general be more valuable for both buyers and sellers. So I think it's an exciting change to be a part of, and very interesting conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Some great closing thoughts. So a big thank you to Tamika, Josh, Joshua, Ashwin, and Tal. Really appreciate it. That was an excellent panel and some great insights. I personally loved hearing about the evolving definition of currency, the expanded use of advanced audiences, which a few of you hit on, some clarifications of how we think about household level measurement and person level measurement, and even some comments on the underlying changing nature of media buying. That was great to hear. So thanks to all of our attendees for joining. We will put this Masters on Upwave's YouTube channel if you want to share with anyone you think would appreciate the content but couldn't join us live. And we hope to see you next quarter and beyond at future Masters of Brand Measurement events. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.